killed 10 people in it, hit by an Israeli missile. I've looked at certain evidence that's come to my attention, you may have seen it as well, maybe, which, this is not proof, but from what I've seen, strongly suggests that that entire incident was a complete fabrication by Hamas. It was not an attack on the school. It was a missile attack which killed 2 Palestinian Islamic Jihad terrorists on a motorbike. Their bodies were then removed from outside the school, positioned in the school. There were then fake casualties positioned around them, lots of wailing women and screaming men, and including children with plastic wounds stuck onto their hands, photograph filmed, and the whole thing became something that the Secretary General of the United Nations announced as a war crime. Now, I don't know if that's fact. I have very, very strong reason to believe it is, and it certainly fits the pattern of behaviour of Hamas. When it comes to this whole business of attacks of civilian casualties, people talk about how disproportionate it is. And the media like to think that disproportionality refers to the number of Israeli civilians killed, the number of Israelis killed, and the number of Palestinians killed. That proportionality has got nothing to do with that. It's a concept, a legal concept in the laws of armed conflict, and it relates to the proportionality of force used on a target that could have civilians in it in relation to the importance of that target. And so just for the sake of clarity, if there's a rocket launcher there, and I'm an Israeli commander, and I see a rocket launcher, and I can see there are some civilians around it, let's say 5, 10 civilians in the area, if I hit that, there's a good likelihood those civilians are going to die. So I have to make a proportionality calculation, and I have to work out, if I do hit that and those civilians die, then that's one aspect. If I don't hit that and the civilians live, what will be the consequences? That rocket will be launched. What happens when that rocket is launched? It flies into Israel and it gets knocked down by an iron dome, so there's no harm done. No, it isn't the case. You have to assume, as a military commander, I would have to make an assumption that rocket is not going to be knocked out by an iron dome. It's going to get to its target, it's going to go into a school, and it's going to kill 20 school children, or 5 school children. So, therefore, it's proportionate for me to hit that target. This is not a calculation of there are 5 there, and I think it might kill 5 there. That's ridiculous. I don't know how many it might kill. It might kill 1, it might kill none. But I know that it poses a threat to a number of innocent Israeli civilians. And therefore I'm entitled under military law to attack that target, even if there are innocent civilians in the vicinity of the target. That's legal, and it happens a lot. Not here as much, but it happens in other countries. Because here, of course, Israel warns the civilians to get out of the way. And often I think always when the civilians don't leave, that target's not hit. An example of where it would be disproportionate, let's say there's a ration truck full of food, parked somewhere, there's loads of civilians around it, and I think about the proportionality thing again. Am I going to hit that ration truck? If I don't hit it, Hamas are going to get their food. If I do hit it, they're going to go hungry. But if I do hit it, I'm going to kill 5, 10 people. So, this is not for sure, but I would say it might be, you might consider that disproportionate. It's a perfectly legitimate target, a ration truck, but you might consider it disproportionate to take 5 civilians' lives to make Hamas go hungry. It's not, these are things not hard and fast. That's what proportionality is. Therefore, all this nonsense that you hear about people like Baroness Warzi, or whatever her name is, resigning because Israel's acting disproportionately. She didn't resign because 15,000 1,500 Pakistani citizens have been killed by the Pakistani government in the Pakistani border areas in the same period as Operation Pillar of Defence, of Operation Protective, whatever it is. This is I told you I'm going to see that. She didn't resign because of that. 1,500 Pakistani civilians killed by their own government because of an operation there. She didn't resign about 200,000 Syrians being killed. But she resigned because a number of Palestinians were murdered by Israel. And there's plenty of others like her. Well, there's no one much like her, but there's plenty of others. She, by the way, she is, by the way, for those who don't know her, she was a British cabinet minister, sacked for incompetence, and then became a junior minister. She's a baroness, and therefore she's unelected. So, you can say what you like about that. One thing I would say is that another cause of death is accidental death. So there's a building over there. It's got some civilians in it, and I don't know if there are civilians in it. I've done what I can to check, but I don't know, and it hits it and kills them. That's not a war crime. It's an accident. It's a mistake, a misjudgment. If I fire a rocket and the rocket goes in the wrong direction, or a bit of artillery or an airstrike and it goes in the wrong direction, accidentally, it's an accident, it's not a war crime. If communications fail, the wrong grid is put in, I as a commander am scared, hungry, I'm shocked by explosions going off around me, by a bloke being killed beside me, I'm confused, disorientated, and I make a wrong decision, and civilians get killed as a result of that. That is not a war crime. These are mistakes, they're not war crimes. They happen because war is a terrible thing. You think how many mistakes you make in the course of a day, and I'm sure you all make a lot in the course of a day, and that's without anyone trying to kill you in the process of you going about your business. And therefore think about how difficult it is when all the different things that can go wrong in a massive military machine are going wrong, and the enemy's trying to kill you at the same time. Mistakes happen. There are bad soldiers. The IDF has bad soldiers. The British Army has bad soldiers. The American Army has bad soldiers. You know that. You know that. I'm sure you aren't, but I'm sure you know plenty of people that are. And bad soldiers do bad things, either because they're stupid or because they're malign. And maybe in some cases they are war crimes if they're bad soldiers who deliberately kill a civilian, but it isn't the policy of the government. And when those things happen, I'm well aware of it, you're well aware of it, when those things happen, when mistakes are made, they're analysed, they're assessed, lessons are learned from them to make sure they don't happen again. In the British Army, in the American Army, in the Israeli Army, even in the French Army, I suspect. If a soldier does something wrong, deliberately does something wrong, or a commander decides he's going to take out of school because he just feels like it, then, of course, the IDF will investigate it, they will try him, and they will punish him. That's what happens in every army. So this does not indicate a policy. It does not indicate a policy of war crime as is suggested by so many in the media today and so many politicians.